This is Michael Gibbs, and I'm the founder and CEO of Go Cloud Careers. And I'm here today, as I am 3 times per week, completely free to help you build your best cloud computing career. Perhaps you'd like to become a solution architect, or a cloud architect, an enterprise architect, cloud engineer, or you're looking for that first solution architect job, enterprise architect job, cloud architect job, or cloud engineering job. That's why we're here, to build you the straightest path to get you to your goals as fast as possible. When it comes to training, time is money, and I don't want to see anybody waste their time going down a zigzag path and learning all the wrong things, which is going to keep them from getting hired, because I want the world to get cloud hired. I've been working in tech now for over 25 years now, and I've spent more than 2 decades helping others get their first tech job or get promoted in tech, and I want to help you get cloud hired, nothing else. At Go Cloud Careers, almost every day we've got a student that gets cloud hired, and I want you to know all of our secrets so you can get cloud hired too. Please tell me where you're from in the chat box, and please tell me the career you desire in the chat box, meaning like a hashtag cloud architect or a hashtag cloud engineer, something that tells us where you're like that, and also tell us where you're from with your geography. I'm in Port St. Lucie, Florida right now. And then next, ask us your questions. That's the whole reason I'm here, to answer your questions, to help you build your best cloud computing career. So that's why we're here. Now, before we begin, let's talk about some free things we're doing for you. Next Thursday, we have our completely free How to Get Your First Cloud Architect Job webinar. People will come from all over the world. I will tell you the things that hiring managers desire in the perfect employee, how to bypass HR so you don't get auto-rejected, so you get hired when you have no experience, how to leverage your life experience, what hiring managers need in the perfect employee, and guess what? You'll build the most wonderful cloud computing career. Now, next week, we have interview coaching next Wednesday. Come and sign up, and I will interview you. And you will know if you're ready to get cloud hired, and if not, you'll know what your gaps are. And then I can advise you what you need to learn, and then you can get cloud hired. I've done about 6,000 interviews in my life, and I'd be thrilled to help coach you how to win the interview. And it's all going to be completely free. Now, we also have a completely free AWS Certified Solution Architect Associate Bootcamp, and that's coming on the week of October 18th, fully updated for the new curriculum, and we think you're going to have a really great time. Good learning experience. It's not going to be PowerPoint slides with blah, 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 blah in the background that's going to give you a headache. It's going to be like a real classroom. We'll teach for 20 minutes, and you'll spend 10 minutes asking questions to make sure you learn the material properly. Because you can't just learn by watching videos and doing labs and not knowing who to ask. That's why we're here, and we're going to support you and ask questions live to make sure you learn just like a real class. And then guess what? On November 8th, I'm going to do an AWS Advanced Networking Plus Bootcamp. And why do I call it an AWS Advanced Networking Plus? The AWS Advanced Networking is too junior for anything. So we're going to add the BGP in. We're going to add the IP address planning in. We're going to add the switching in. We're going to add all the stuff that you really need to know. And it'll be easy to understand why. Well, I've been networking now for 25 years. I'm one of the original Cisco certified internet experts, with my number being 7417. That's how long it's been since I've been doing networking. I've been teaching engineers. I taught some with Cisco, Riverstone Networks. I was coaching people at WorldCom now, Verizon, even when I was young. I've always been helping others and sharing knowledge, and I want to share it with you. I've had my life in tech, and now it's time for me to raise the next generation of tech leaders, which means you. So please join us on that bootcamp. Completely free. So please ask me what questions you have. Tell me where you're from. Hi, Chow. Good morning. Eddie Patrick. Good morning, everyone. And of course, Eddie Patrick, cloud hire. Mr. Wright, do I allow students to be in the program longer than a year, or would they need to repurchase the program again? Now, Mr. Wright, none of my students need to be in the program for over a year. There's no reason for it. So if somebody needed to be there for an extra month or two, they could send us an email and we can make a case-by-case decision. Reality is, if we've got space and we're not too chaotic, we'd rather let somebody stay and hang on for a couple months, as long as they're getting hired. But what if they stopped for 6 months or never really started? That's another story. We have that happen periodically too. We have people that sign up and never do anything. And then they'd like to come back, and we allow that because I want everybody to be there. But if somebody's been in my program, they don't need more than a year if they're really doing the work, if they're really following the instructions. But if they hadn't taken it seriously, if we've got capacity, sure, we'll talk to them on a case-by-case basis. And if they need to stay in, we'll figure out some kind of appropriate thing that's less effective than the entire cost of the course, because our goal is just to get everybody hired. But it's on a case-by-case basis. We can't obviously have a course and people participate in live classes for 15 years, so we've got to draw the line somewhere. But having said that, if we've got somebody and they need to stay a little longer, we'll just let them stay a little longer, assuming we can. Again, they send a message to our team and we'll do that. I've had a dozen people that so far this year that we've extended a month, and I was more than happy to do it. It didn't concern me at all because I just want all my students getting cloud hired. But we never know what the future brings. We never know what capacity is, because we need to make sure all of our students get a really, really great experience too. So we balance the needs of our students versus our wits and our hearts. But the reality is, in most cases, we'll probably just let you stay in longer if they need longer than a year. And there are certain cases where somebody's in high school and they buy our course. We just let them stay in it until they're done high school, because there's special use cases and special situations. So I don't know the specifics of your case, or if there's a reason you would need longer than a year. And if there is, I'm sure we could talk about it on a case-by-case basis. My team is beyond reasonable, because we care about one thing. Our students get cloud hired, and that's it. So I don't want to make a blanket statement on YouTube, but if you're one of our students and you need something for a reason, just send an email to info@GoCloudCareers, and we'll get you there. I will tell you this, we don't take away the recorded content after the year, and we don't remove people from Slack after a year. So basically, our students get the entire course still. I mean, the labs are limited to 16 weeks, but the entire tour course, all the 500 hours of training, the students will keep access to that long after the year. And they can still use our Slack channel and communicate to other students and participate in things long after the year. And we've got an alumni network that do that too. So the point is it depends on exactly what you're asking. But the live classes, we've been limiting to them a year. But sometimes we go a couple months longer too if somebody needs it. Good question, Mr. Wright. Elizabeth James, how are you doing today? You admire my strong work ethic. I'm truly a role model. Struggling a little bit with the voice because I use it so much, but Elizabeth James, I'm still here to help everyone get cloud hired. Thank you so much. I am no stranger to hard work. There was at one point, I was working 16 hours a day. I'd go fly to Washington, D.C., give a presentation, go fly to San Jose, give a couple presentations, entertain clients that night, fly that night straight to London. It was just kind of lifestyle I had for a while. Now being an architect is a lot simpler because we've got unified communications everywhere. The old WebEx of the day was just not good enough. Obviously, WebEx got better as camera technology got better. Telepresence, when Cisco invented it, really changed the amount of work I did. But Elizabeth, I do the best I can to help as many people in the world get cloud hired. Up and up. What did you see in Yvonne that made you first believe he could be so successful? Up and up, great question. The first time I saw Yvonne in class, I remember it like it was yesterday. He was in a red sweatshirt that said Georgia Tech on it, and he was out there, hello, 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 hello. I'm here. I got to introduce myself. It's my name, Yvonne. He had a passion. He had an energy. He had an enthusiasm. And when I saw that, I knew he was going to be there. He asked questions, and he was not afraid of hard work. And when I saw that, I knew that he was going to be successful. Now, how successful was Yvonne? Let me put it to you this way. This fine young man came to America at 15 years old from Cameroon. He let his family stay there because they couldn't all afford to come here, and they found a way to get one person to America. Now, at 15 years old, he had to find a family from the church that he could actually stay with. And then, because, he was 15 years old. And then after that, while he went to college, he literally drove 90 minutes to college back and forth each day and worked as a waiter full-time every night. While doing that, he took my course. He worked really hard. He studied really hard. He participated in class, turned his camera on in class, and every time there was a design, Ivan was part of it. I got to tell you, Ivan's the son I never had. The way he carries himself. Ivan helps us with the Cloud Heroes Africa program. He still keeps in contact and inspires our students. Ivan is absolutely, absolutely, absolutely amazing. In fact, I have someone that works for me on my team that reminds me a lot of Ivan. She too has that energy, enthusiasm, and passion. I've got a lot of students that are incredible too, but I can think of one that reminds me of Ivan just right now. And in fact, if you see what you look in Delroy Bat when you see him sometimes come to class, or if you see what Daniel Blisu had midway through the class, that oomph, that I will conquer the world, that is exactly what I saw in Ivan. That hunger, that willingness, and the motivation to succeed. You know, IBM had a paper many years ago. Bear Stearns, the financial organization, had a similar paper floating around, and it said, who do we hire? MBAs versus PhDs. The MBA was someone with a master's in business administration, and the PhD was someone who was poor with a deep desire to be rich. Now, then they said, and IBM and some of these other companies said, look, MBAs are great, and I have one too, but I want that poor person that's going to, the deep desire to be rich, they're going to get there. I saw that with Ivan. I've seen that with others. And while I've coached people from successful backgrounds and limited means, when you combine education with that level of motivation, that goal, that extreme hunger, that's what I saw in Ivan. I have somebody I like to call Super Child too. She has those same characteristics, that energy, that oomph, that enthusiasm, that passion. She's same kind of strength. That's what I see. In fact, up and up, you know, when I was younger, I mean, I had the same level of oomph in me. Which is why I always say, you know, these people, I wish they were my kids. Because when I was in school, I couldn't afford school. I worked literally almost 2 full-time jobs while going to college. And when I got out of that program, I mean, 2 things happened. One is I had nothing in common with anybody less than 35, because they were the people at the fire department that I was working with. And 2, I got through college and I was like, wow. I then went to 2 graduate schools full-time at the same time. I'm not joking, and had a full-time job. And then when my wife suggested to me, you know, you love tech so much, you spend all your money in tech, why don't you just get a job in tech? Whoa, I was that same hunger. I was reading 1,000 pages a day for 6 months straight. I couldn't stop. I couldn't sleep. All I could do was focus on becoming a great network engineer, and I did it in 6 months. So that's what I saw in him, that oomph, that power, that strength, that I will never quit attitude. Kind of like when SEALs go to BUDS, or people in the Navy go to BUDS to hope to become a Navy SEAL, and they do surf torture with them and make them, you know, be in cold water for periods of time, and they do sugar cookies, and they run to the people that are sick, and then do boat cruise. The whole goal is to torture them to see who's strong enough to survive. And those people that survive, they're the very best, the very brightest, and they will never quit until they're successful. That's what I saw in Ivan up and up. Really respect Ivan. I am really excited that Ivan's going to come and share his experience as being a cloud architect with AWS. We trained Ivan. He was working as a food server and a college student. AWS interviewed him about a year ago. When they interviewed him about a year ago, they offered him the position. Now, Ivan was so amazing, with 0 experience, that he said to AWS, I want this job so badly, but would you let me graduate college first? I graduated in 6 months, but I want to come here. And they did. They waited 6 months for this guy that didn't even have any experience to hire him. That's how amazing Ivan was. And the same thing that I saw him at first day, hi, Mike, hi, Mike. That's what I see, that motivation, that energy and enthusiasm and passion. Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't try. And Ivan not only has talent, and he tries. Wonderful, wonderful question up and up. Robix, hi Mike, I hope I'm doing better today than yesterday. Still struggling with the voice, but trying to work with it. Honey, lemon and ginger, yes, thank you so much. I'm also, I've actually seen some specialists on this, and they're guiding me throughout the process as well. Good news about practicing medicine when you're younger and having a wife that practices internal medicine, as I could see her. And then we reached out to some otolaryngologists and asked for their advice. So thank you so much, Robix. I'm so appreciative of your help. Robert, how the 2 days AWS Associate Bootcamp looks like, and what time does it start and what time does it end? Robix, it's not a 2-day thing, it's a 4 or 5 day thing. It's at least 3 hours per day. And if you register for the course on the link, you'll be sent an email that my team will set. My team does the scheduling and the timing. So my team can post it into the chat box, although I'm pretty sure my team actually sent a email along the way yesterday, but my team is telling me that it starts at 12 p.m. each day, and it'll go for at least 3 to 4 hours every day. And it's going to be fun. We're going to make it a great experience for you. Min-Win, you saw your recent post about helping veterans on LinkedIn. Can I elaborate on that? Absolutely. So I'm all about helping those that need it the most. And veterans are a population that I feel needs our help and deserves our help, and I'm willing to do anything I can to help them build their best career. So here's the thing. Veterans have a lot of things to offer prospective employers. In fact, it goes back to what I was talking about with Yvonne Tamba. Veterans, as a rule, have a degree of mental toughness, meaning they were trained not to quit unless they're dead. So they're taught to fight, no matter how much pain you're in, how much torture it is, and never quit, because that's the only way you may save your life and your teammates' life. So for that, veterans have that mental toughness. Now, veterans have something else that's pretty exceptional. They have a level of situational awareness, meaning they see what's going on around them. They're trained for these things. In fact, I train this with some of my students periodically. While the average person's walking around like this in a parking lot, and they're texting on their phone and they don't see what's going on around them, the veteran's going to be the one walking through the parking lot and see a car that's ready to hit a little girl and pull that little girl to safety, because they're situationally aware and they're trained for that. So there's that. Now, another thing veterans are trained for is attention to detail. Most Marines that I know were told attention to detail, lack of it will get you killed in war. So people are trained in attention to detail, critical business skills. Now, another thing that employers desire is someone's ability to follow instructions and take direction. And guess what? People in the military are experts at following instructions and taking direction. It's part of the culture. So now you've got this hard work thing, this energetic thing, this enthusiasm and passionate thing. Now you've got the makings of someone that can be so wonderful. But here's where the challenge comes in. Many of these wonderful men and women who've served to protect our freedom and ensure safety for others throughout the world, many of these people have been through a lot. They've been through some trauma. It's not fun getting shot at. It's not fun getting hit with objects, carrying huge loads of gear and body armor and other things that weigh them down. And what goes on is the veterans often have a level of PTSD. So in our program, we have a lot of yoga in there and some special breathing and meditation exercises, some cognitive behavior therapy. And even if you don't have PTSD, it increases your emotional intelligence dramatically, because emotional intelligence is about raising your emotions, managing your emotions and someone else's. So let's talk about it this way. That training module really helps. And emotional intelligence, as we know, is the best predictor for career success. Now, veterans often have a degree of arthritis and injuries, and that's what we brought in that yoga program. I brought in the best yoga instructor I've ever met, and I've been teaching yoga, and I've been practicing yoga for 16 years, and I'm a 500-hour yoga instructor, and still, this is the best person I knew, so I brought him in there. Now, I've added a special leadership program to the veterans program, and here's why. In the military, most leadership is done via command and control. Min-Win, you do this right now. And the officer says, Roger that, and on to it. Now, that worked great in the military world where power and rank actually exist, but in the civilian world, well, that does not work. So I have a special leadership program to transition people from command and control leadership to the types of leadership that are appropriate in the civilian world. For example, types of leadership that are appropriate in the civilian world. So, that's kind of different. I also give special interview training to the veterans so they can kind of understand how to translate their past experience to things that are completely relevant in the future. So the veterans program is something I'm really, really proud about. We bundled a lot of training in that to give our veterans the best chances competitively in the world. And we have a very special discount for veterans too. We just want to thank those that have protected and served for us to make our lives better. Deepest respect for veterans. Tried to enlist in the Marine Corps at 18 years old. It didn't work, but I've lived alongside these warriors my entire life, and I respect the warriors so much. Became a firefighter paramedic, and I know what his tactical lifestyle is as well. So that's what we did when we created a program to really give our soldiers the best opportunities anywhere in the world. Great question, Minwin. Devesh, you're in your final year of university. You just completed the solution architect certification. What should your path look like if you want a career as a solution architect? Well, Devesh, you're going to have to learn how to be a solution architect because it's not covered in that certification. So I will tell you that the AWS Certified Solution Architect Professional is up to about 5% of what's necessary for a cloud architect job. The other 95% of the stuff that you need to learn. So, Devesh, I'm going to give you two options. I'll tell you what we do, or I'll tell you what you could do on your own. Now, with us, we train everybody on all these things, and that's why our students get hired. So you need to understand that an architect does not touch technology, Devesh. It is a business executive who designs the technology, presents the technology, and sells the technology. Our world as a solution architect or a cloud architect is the following. We transform businesses through the use of technology. And what your path should look like, Devesh, is if you want to be a solution architect, that should be your first job. I don't understand these path questions because people have it in their mind that in order to be like an architect, you're going to do this help desk silly thing for a couple of years. And it's not silly if you want to do help desk, but it's silly if you want to be an architect. And they're going to do this maintenance thing, this sysops thing, and then hopefully magically they're going to be architects. But they won't be, and here's why. Learning somebody else's job does not teach you your job, ever. It's not like people become doctors by thinking that they're going to be a nursing assistant and then a nurse and then a pharmacist and a physical therapist, and hopefully one day they'll be a doctor. No, they get trained for it. Airplane pilots don't learn how to be airplane mechanics and flight attendants and hope there's there. So that's the path is you become a solution architect, but you need the right training. Now, what are the things that you need to learn? You need to learn the following. It's all about your business acumen, because how do you transform a business if you don't understand business? You can't. So the first thing that you need to know is as follows. Number one, you must have excellent listening skills and communication skills. Why? Because the customer doesn't hand you a printout and say, build this. You've got to ask the customer about their business goals, their business pain points, their business challenges, and the kinds of things they're trying to achieve. From there, you can figure out what types of technology will improve that business. But if you don't understand business, forget it. So without excellent communication skills, you're not there. So either get an MBA or take a communication skills course. I've taken about $250,000 of communication skills training, leadership training, and the other trainings that I'm telling you with, in addition, all together. So first, there's that. Now, the next thing that you need to understand is you're going to be presenting every day as an architect, presenting at conferences, presenting to customers, presenting to executives, meaning CEOs, CFOs, CIOs, CTOs. So you're going to have to get some extraordinarily good presentation skills. We teach them. You won't get them in an MBA program, but there's people that like Speak Easy or Jerry Weissman. You can pay them a couple $1,000s for the week, and they'll teach you. Of course, our course is a third of that course, and we teach you all this, but these are the things that you need to learn. Now, next, architects sell solutions. So you're going to have to learn how to be a good sales rep. You're going to have to go sell the customer on your design. You're going to have to convince the customer that your $100 million solution is going to deliver $200 million of business value. So we'll talk about what that means in a minute. And when you meet with a customer and they give you these requirements, you're going to have to go back to your team and sell internal management on why you need to borrow the next 30 people to be part of your team, all at a cost of $200,000 a year. So you're going to be asking for millions of dollars of funding just to design an architecture. So you're going to have to learn how to sell that. Now, nobody buys technology because they think it's cool device. They buy technology to solve a business problem. So you will have to learn how to do ROI modeling, return on investment capital modeling, showing the customer that if they invest this money, they're going to get this much money in business value. So we teach this, but if you're not with us, that's part of your MBA program. And that's why these things are kind of there. Now, after this, you're going to need to have executive presence. What's executive presence? Hi, Divnesh. My name is Mike, and I'm a cloud architect with 25 years experience. Versus, hi, Divnesh. This is Mike Gibbs. I'm a cloud architect with 25 years experience, and I'm here to help you. I had to look at a lot of training for that, probably $30,000 of executive presence training when all was said and done. And I had an executive coach that I worked with for a long time to help me with that. Now, Divnesh, the next thing you have to understand as an architect is you're going to need really good leadership skills, because you're going to be leading teams of upwards of 50 people that don't even work for you. Don't even work for you. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind. So those are some of the business skills that you're going to need. Also, you're going to need CXO relevancy. And what do I mean by that? And honestly, that's not covered in an MBA program. I had to take special training for this. The CEO cares about one thing. The CFO cares about something else. The chief technology officer cares about something else. And those, you have to be able to communicate to each and every one of those people and actually address their needs. So that's just the stuff on the business side. Now, when it comes to being an architect, you have to understand what you're designing and what you're moving. And what do we really do as architects? We take the stuff from the network and the data center and migrate it to the cloud. But we can't do any architecture if we don't know what it is. See, it's not like a silly certified solution architect professional where we configure the names of services. That's not our job. We don't touch the technology. We don't configure everything. We design it. So we have to understand design. So what you need to know from the network is BGP, IP address planning, subnetting, supernetting, route aggregation, route summarization. Which WAN technology are you going to use? Are you going to use an SSL VPN, an IPsec VPN? Are you going to use a private line, Ethernet over MPLS, software-defined networking, and SASE? So you need to understand all those networking WAN technologies in depth so you know which is appropriate for your customer at the time. Now, we're going to be dealing with NAT, and it's not the kind of nonsense that you just see in the Certified Solution Architect Professional or AWS Advanced Networking. We're going to be using NAT to connect to the internet, like they teach in those courses, not with overlapping IP addresses when one customer buys another customer, for example, and they use the same RFC 1918 private addressing space. Now, we're going to be dealing with a lot of switching, which means VLANs, VLAN tagging, VLAN trunking protocols. And whenever we get into switching, we're dealing with spanning tree, rapid spanning tree, and of course, port channel, ether channel, and link aggregation groups. Now, we need to know a lot about ARP, proxy ARP, DNS, DHCP, these kind of things. And that's just a networking side. Now, on the data side, you must understand servers and server virtualizations, containers and container orchestration, storage area networks in depth, and how to architect them, not how to configure them with regards to block storage, object storage, file storage. When to use network load balancers versus application load balancers versus API gateways versus reverse proxies, and how to make those things scale, and how to combine them into a more scalable, higher availability solution. Now we're talking about the kinds of business applications that you can actually use as something. So kind of keep those in the back of your mind. And lastly, what kind of next generation firewalls, IDS, IPS systems, VPN concentrators, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So those are the kind of things that you need to know as an architect. You're not going to get there by certification. There's no certification that's ever going to do it. So those are what you need to do. So make sure that you understand those components. That is what an architect does. It's not something you can just do a certified solutions architect professional and a CCNP from a networking side and get it. You need to understand the whole thing. And you know what's the most important part of it? The business skills. So get an MBA or get trained by us. Those are the kind of things that you need to do. Now, when you actually popped in a chatbot, you think you're clear on the role. You've even consulted a small startup to provide their API in the cloud. That's not the architecture. That's just an API. That's one piece of the entire system. And you don't consult startups on what they need in a cloud architect, because startups don't hire cloud architects. AWS hires cloud architects. Microsoft hires cloud architects. Google hires cloud architects. JP Morgan Chase hires a lot of them. Bearing Plane, Accenture, Capgemini, big global retailers hire them, big global organizations. Small businesses don't need a cloud architect. A small business can buy a $10,000 server, put on VMware, and be done for the next 5 years. Not need a cloud architect, save the $200,000 a year for the cloud architect employee, save the complexities and all of that. They can do it all in a single thing. So don't consult a startup, because we don't work there anyway. We work at Fortune 100 companies, Fortune 500 companies, and big global organizations. So make sure you learn the role. We told you exactly what the role is. It's a digital transformation specialist. Watch some of my people that have actually gotten the jobs with zero experience talk about it, and they'll all tell you they learned nothing in certification, but they had to learn these other things. And as soon as they did, they got there. So you could try doing it this way. And if you're struggling 6 months from now, 8 months from now, 2 years from now to find a job, we would be happy to help you, or you can follow these directions. I wish you the best. I want you to get there. Please ask, if you're going to ask the role, ask 100 companies and ask big companies. Why? I've been asking people for 25 years. And generally speaking, I don't focus on small companies because they don't hire network architects. And Chris, you may have some perspectives as well after watching.
I've got some perspectives, but there's actually a couple of comments in the chat box that will definitely hit this. I'm about to go out of order on the questions. I was originally going to go out of order because this person went on an interview and he shared the exact feedback that they gave. And it's probably the most honest feedback that I've seen in probably 15 or 20 years, which blew my mind. But it also ties into what Devesh is talking about. So I'm going to put them up. If it's okay with you, I'm going to read them out.
Please.
All right, perfect. So this is someone that's just recently joined our program. So Smith says that they recently joined the program about a week ago. I've got that. They have the associate and professional AWS certs. They've gone through a series of interviews in the past 2 months. Here is the feedback they usually get. Unfortunately, I don't have the news you are hoping for, as we are not looking to proceed with an offer to yourself at this time. Dave and Greg felt that although the technical side of the interview was good, the design was too tech-focused and not client-focused. And even with the solutions architect experience, it was perhaps the biggest difference was that this was focused on internal solutions. In short, we're looking for someone who would be a better fit for what we are looking for, particularly around client engagement, which would be a large part of the role. That, as I said, that's like the most honest feedback I've seen in quite a while. But it lays out exactly what the role is. It's not tech, it's business. And so I wanted to bring that up for you. I went out of order. I'm sorry, everybody.
No, and thank you for doing that, Chris. I'm telling you, this is not a tech job. People that think they're going to just get tech certs and get hired, or certs and get hired, they're never going to get hired, ever, unless they had 20 years of experience anyway and they actually knew the job. This is not a position where you focus on the tech. And that's why engineers have the hardest time becoming architects. And people think there's a path where they become an engineer and want to be an architect. And here's why it's such a challenge. The engineers focus on the tech because that's their job. The architects focus on the client and the client's business transformation. That's why I'm talking about all these executive business skills, because I've interviewed great engineers. I've interviewed great technology professionals. And here's what it comes down to. You're a wonderful engineer, but I need an architect, not an engineer. And We will help you with this very easily, Smith. This is nothing to transform you. In a matter of months, we'll get you thinking like an architect. We'll have you focused on the business transformation. We'll have you focused on the presentation skills. We'll have you focused on the leadership skills, the executive presence. Today in class, we're going to take 2 resumes, the hardest resumes to translate you can imagine, and turn them to architect resumes. Why do I say they're hard? They're from teachers. Now, teachers have so many of the skills that an architect needs with regards to communication skills and eliciting information from the clients and being able to follow directions and adhere to a plan. They're actually incredible. And I love working with teachers. This month, or about 2 months ago, we got a mental health tech, her first tech job at JP Morgan Chase, and she loved it. Coyote came with us as a college student working for AWS. Yvonne Tamba, who's going to be back, came to us working with AWS, but it was his personality, his charm and charisma. Daniel Bosa, one of the most likable kids I've ever met, 21 years old, working as a cloud architect. Delroy Batt, 24 years old, he visited me in Florida last week. And Smith, if you were here last week in class, I don't know when you just joined, it might have been this week, I'm not sure. You would have seen the training that I did with Delroy Batt. And I had my students ask him what he did, because he got an architect job with no experience. And he has, of course, 0 cloud certifications, because employers don't care. They care about capabilities. So that's the key. But you got to be careful who you ask your information to. The people if somebody wants to get an architect job, ask someone that's been an architect for 25 years or more. Ask someone that's hired and fired architects. Ask someone that's made it all the way to the principal level or the distinguished level. Why? These are the people that know the job. I'm not going to ask a software engineer because they don't know our job. I'm not going to ask a cloud engineer because they don't ask our job. And I'm not going to ask a startup because, unfortunately, a startup doesn't know what they need to know at all. They don't have the technology. They don't have the technology requirements. Now, I'd say we were a small startup. We run our own cloud. We don't use anybody else's cloud. We run our own. We built our own OpenStack cloud, and it's really a great experience. We have full control of our cloud. We built it for much, much less running our private cloud than it would cost to in a public cloud. But to be fair, we have cloud architects on staff, so we can do this like it's nothing. But if we didn't have the sophistication we had, we'd go somewhere else. So it's all about client engagement, Smith. 100% about client engagement. It's all about those customer-facing skills. It's about listening to the customer, what they tell you, Smith. So when the customer says, look, I have a manufacturing challenge, we have a lot of defects, and we manufacture across the world in multiple locations, then you need to figure out what you can do. What kind of technologies in the supply chain will help? What kind of communications and collaboration technologies can be used? What kind of process changes could be done? And checklists on the system to make sure that one thing gets done before another to enhance quality. That's architecture. And, Smith, I like to call architecture 50-50 business tech. But the reality is most architects would say that it's almost 80 to 100% business and 20% tech. Because here's what we do. I called one of my architect buddies a while back, and I said, hey, what do you do in your job? And he says, I tell jokes. He said, and I bring up the hand into the room, and I said, I've done that. 1 year, I spent $100,000 on lunches of company money, thankfully. And it was like to bring out the best in the others to close a massive business deal. And it's all about managing people. The best way I've heard it described as an architect is herding cats. And I love cats, by the way. And the reason they said herding cats, and this is the term used in the industry by architects, is cats are smart and cats are nimble. The cats kind of have the mind of their own. You want the cat to do one thing, and it decides it's going to start grooming itself. And, you want to go downstairs and sit on the sofa with your cat on your lap, and your cat's scratching at the door because they want to go out, because they're smart, they're capable. So what we deal with is really smart people, hundreds of them, thousands of them. And we got to build a team of hundreds of smart people that are all like cats that want to go run in their own direction. And that's the job of the architect. And here's why, Smith. It's not how good you are in your tech skills. It's how good you are at your team building skills and your listening skills. I've seen great engineers become architects and fired on their first week because they couldn't listen to the customer, they couldn't get requirements. And there's been that. And, kind of keep that in the back of your mind. At the same time, I've seen engineers dazzle customers if they stop focusing on engineering and start focusing on the business transformation. So, Smith, we can easily get past this. Keep tending our classes. You'll know in class when I teach them, yes, I talk about the tech, but I always talk about the transformation. In fact, I talk more about the transformation than the tech, unless I'm with the tech people, because we're going to be delivering 3 levels of presentation. Those to the executives, and we can't be talking about the tech to the executive, we talk about the transformation to the executive. Those to the senior management, still, it's mostly about the transformation, a little bit about the tech. Hiring manager level, which we have to talk to as well, now it's about 50 tech, 50 transformation. Tech people, they get to be 60, 70% tech. So it's about speaking the right language. So Smith, we can easily help you with that, but you can't focus on the tech. You must focus on the transformation. It's all about the transformation. And Smith, that's why I came out of retirement, because I saw what was going on. I saw there were certification providers making architect classes that were teaching admin work, not even engineering work. And I knew nobody would be hired by that. So that's why we do what we do, and that's why we've got our students getting hired every day. And it all comes back, and I'll read this to you. It's my favorite list. It's my favorite list. And the reason it's my favorite list is the people that are hiring you are actually telling you what they want, and nobody listens to them. So Gartner, who's one of my favorite organizations, want to know the best cloud? Ask Gartner. Want to know the best firewall? Ask Gartner. And when people ask, when Gartner saw the people and what they were learning and silly job descriptions as cloud architects, they knew it wasn't an architect role, because many of us have been architects for decades. And architects, as a rule, generally don't touch the technology. So Gartner started asking chief information officers, and my team will publish this article for you, so it's not just hearing it from me. It's published in CIO magazine. Oh, by the way, what does the CIO do? They hire you, they fire you, they run the entire IT department, so this is your boss in some way, shape, or form. And when CIOs were asked, what would you like in a cloud architect, they said the 3 main responsibilities for a cloud architect are to lead the cultural change for cloud adoption, leadership, developing and coordinating a cloud architecture, tech, developing a cloud strategy and coordinating the adoption process, half leadership, half tech. Then they said find talent with the necessary skills. That's leadership. Assess application software and hardware. That's tech. Establish best practice for the cloud across the company. Leadership all the way. Creating a cloud broker team. That's leadership. You're building a team. Selecting cloud providers and vetting third-party services. Well, that's going to be part business case, part tech. So that's half business, half tech. Overseeing governance and mitigating risk. 100% business. Working closely with the IT security people to monitor privacy and develop incident response procedures. That's all business. Manage budgets and estimate costs. That's all business and operating at scale. So as you can see, what's going on here is there's a confusion between people that misconfuse engineering and architecture. And I'm an architect. I train architects. If you train to be an engineer, well, unfortunately, you can't get hired as an architect. Why? Because let's say you wanted a cat, because your wife loves cats, and you like dogs. And you went to the pet shop to buy your wife a cat because she's angry at you. And a beautiful, beautiful dog comes. What are you going to do? You're going to buy the dog? No, you're going to go to get the cat because you want to make your wife happy. So employers hire what they need for the position. Chris, let's go to the next one. Robotics. You're trying to understand BGP. It's not that easy. As architects, do we need to know the details of BGP? Absolutely, Robotics. And it's not easy. Nothing good is easy. It's easy to learn how to configure something, but we have to design it. So yes, you do need to learn it. So Robotics, here's what I would do. Watch our BGP lectures. Read our BGP documentation. I would go to the Internet Engineering Task Force documentation on BGP, which is required reading in the protocol that you're part of. I would read all the required readings, and guess what? Attend our BGP sessions, and it'll be very easy for you to learn. But yes, it's going to be hard. That's why we have required reading. That's why we actually give you the BGP specification, because I'll tell you what, that's how I learned BGP. There was a great book from Bassam Halabi that Cisco pressed, and I always recommend that, and that was very helpful. But when it really comes down to it, you've got to read the RFC, request for comments. That is the actual specification. It explains it in such detail that the manufacturers of routing and switching projects use that to determine how to write the code for the routing protocols. It's that critical, that critical. So please do the required reading in the course, and then you'll understand BGP and Robux. Nothing is easy. Learning BGP is about 10 times harder than learning the AWS Certified Solution Architect and Professional. It's harder to learn BGP than both of those curriculums put together. That's why architects are paid a lot. We're not paid a lot because it's something simple you could do by following the certification course and be done with it. We're paid a lot because the knowledge of what we need to have in our head to make sure that our designs work and are highly available and are secure. It's so rare to find that in a person, along with exceptional leadership, communication skills, sales skills, executive presence. It's a unicorn role. It's truly a hybrid role. Super leadership skills, whoops, super communication skills, super executive skills, and you got to be a great technology professional. And it's a lot harder to design something than configure it. Best game to be. Hi, Mike. You're a third-year student, majors in electronics and communications. What should you study to become a DevOps engineer? You studied C, CNA, a little Linux, a little OpenStack, and a little SDN. Best game TV, 90% of that is not related to being a DevOps engineer. To be a DevOps engineer, you must become a good software engineer first, because they're coding and automating software release cycles and doing Kubernetes. If you wanted to be a DevOps engineer, I would focus on make sure you understand Linux well enough to compile code and things like that, because you're going to be using it. I would be focused then, and really the cloud has nothing to do with DevOps engineering. Then I would be focused on learning Terraform, infrastructure as code. I'd be focused on learning. I'd be focused on learning Kubernetes. I would be focused on learning the DevOps tools, Jenkins, Spinnaker, and all those other cloud and non-cloud based DevOps tools. Those are the skills, but you got to be a software developer first. So keep that in the back of your mind. Now, telecommunications lends itself more to networking, which is okay. It doesn't matter what your degrees are in. Look, mine are in healthcare, and I've still been an architect for 25 years. But focus on Kubernetes, scripting in Python, coding in Python. Focus on DevOps tools. Focus on Terraform, infrastructure as code, those kinds of things. They're your DevOps engineering things, not OpenStack, which is a cloud, not CCNA, which is networking. And software-defined networking, assuming that's what you mean by SDN, because it's an acronym, and acronyms can mean many things. That also is not anything to do with DevOps engineering. And that's why I'm here, because I hate to see people learning everybody else's job. So learn those things, and you'll be learning DevOps engineering. And DevOps engineering is not system oriented. That's architecture. DevOps engineering is deploying infrastructure as code, those kind of things. Anthony, what's the major difference between the AWS Associate test and the professional test? Well, the associate one is really basic. And it's more of the name of what Amazon calls things and a little bit about what they are. The professional one, it's kind of like they decided to write an exam, and they wanted to make it challenging by making the questions hard to read and hard to understand. So instead of asking you a straightforward question like in the associate, they put something together with its 4 and 5 lines, strung together with 1,000,001 buzzwords, and they kind of obfuscate the question, or obfuscate the question. They make it hard to figure out what the question is. And then they give you they give you the answers, and the answers are again littered with jargon and buzzwords. And I'd like to say that to pass that exam, it's really training you on how do you convince yourselves to use only AWS stuff and sell AWS stuff. So I would view the first one as an introductory level sales exam, and the second one as a hard to read similar exam. It's just the complexity of reading the questions, and the depth isn't that great on either one of them. But the questions on the professional are very obscure and written very poorly and written very wordy. That's the biggest definition that we really see. And Smith, you recently joined the Go Code program about a week ago. We went through this, but we'll get you to your goals. Quick Strike Money One. Hey, Mike, are there any specs on my laptop for the program for Cloud Engineer? Of course not, because all the work we do for the most part is on our data center servers. So no, there's really not. Actually, there is a Vagrant package which you do on your own package for some of the things, but it's not that great in terms of things that you really need to do. 99% of the stuff you can actually do on our servers, but I would say if you're going to do certain labs on your things, you need at least 4 cores and say 16 gigs of RAM if you're going to be doing the labs on your stuff. But most of those labs you can do on our servers, in which case what your system is really irrelevant, as long as you can install VPN software and connect to our data center and use our VMware servers. Robux. Is business certification? No, there's not certifications that help anybody in these worlds. So, I mean, you need someone that's an expert, and certifications are just pieces of paper. I mean, I would use a certification to heat my house if I ran out of electric and gas. And a CFA is great if you want to be working on somebody's portfolio, but it's not going to teach you how to connect to CEOs. So no, not at all. Not going to help you in any way. Now, Robux, if you are actually an architect and prior to that you were a CFA that had 10 years experience working in a bank, now that would make you better for banking. But no, if you're going to consult to a bank, they're going to be much more concerned about their business acumen than a silly certification. Certifications, you got to understand, are about training you for junior level jobs. These architects are not junior level jobs. They're jobs that require executiveness. Now, we get people these jobs by giving them 500 hours in the right direction. But here's what happens if you're going to do this, Robux. You're going to be focused on everybody else's job that you will be spread so thin that you will not have time to learn your job. You want to be an architect, be an architect. Focus on being an architect. Don't waste your time on irrelevant certifications from other industries and things like that. Focus on being an architect. Look, the certification will help you get the interview. That's easy. But, keep this in the back of your mind. It's all about being good at your job, mastering your job. Everybody else is going to be focused on getting all these silly certifications. And I've interviewed thousands of them. And you know what that's like when you ask someone a question? Please tell me how to load share across equal cost paths. Well, I passed an AWS network. I'm like, okay, that's great. Now, could you tell me how to do it? But I passed a certification. I'm like, yeah, but how do I do it? And they give you some answer like a load balancer, which is so obvious that they don't know. Don't worry about certification. Worry about being great at your job. Look, get a cloud certification, maybe a networking certification to help get the interview. But nobody will ever hire you based on the knowledge in the certification. They'll hire you on your ability to do the job. And certifications don't teach people how to be a CEO. Like, there's no such thing as a CEO certification. But you're going to have to sell to the CEO. So you have to think like a CEO. Don't waste your time with irrelevant stuff. Focus on learning to be CXO relevant. Again, not taught in certifications. Zach, with all the companies building clouds for third parties, is there really many business actively migrating to cloud? Incredible numbers. Where the architect won't be in demand once you complete our course. Well, Zach, who's building the private clouds? Wait, what? You need a cloud architect to design the private cloud? Zach, why do you think we're doing OpenStack? Now, here's the thing. Most businesses are going to the cloud, but initially the cloud providers tried to say, hey, it's all better and faster and cheaper with us. And we looked at it as real cloud architects and said, that's not true. Some things are cheaper on the cloud. Some things are cheaper in the data center. Some things, when you need high level of disk performance, you can do much better in the data center than the cloud. Low latency is better in the data center than the cloud. So what businesses are starting to realize is, look, they can't just use one cloud. Now, for years and years and years, we've told people, never, ever put all your eggs in a single basket. Never be crazy enough to use a single cloud. And here's the reason why. A single cloud is a single point of failure. It doesn't matter how many availability zones and regions you're using, because you got a control plane problem, a hacking event, or a networking event, and the whole cloud goes away. And we've seen these things happen time and time again. Now, we told people years ago never to use a single service provider. No business in the world would be crazy enough to put all their links on just AT&T or just Verizon. Two incredibly great service providers. They use both. And by using both, if one of the providers goes down, they've got another one. So what happened is we had a bunch of people that didn't understand the cloud because they got certified, send stuff to the cloud. They had a bunch of hacking events, S3 buckets that weren't done. And many organizations said, wait, the cloud's not cheaper. Well, in some cases it is, in some cases it isn't. Now what organizations are doing is they're hiring cloud architects to build their enterprise cloud. And they're connecting that enterprise cloud to multiple other clouds. For example, think about it from a business perspective. Your data center is higher performance, but you might want to do sporadic machine learning. If you wanted to do sporadic machine learning and you didn't want to hire a bunch of data scientists, you might go to the Google Cloud and say, wow, there's a lot of pre-made algorithms out there, and stick your things there. Now, at the same time, you might want to use an auto-scaling group and cloud bursting, where you go from your data center, which is running smoothly, and when you need capacity, send it to the public cloud or two. And that's great. Plus disaster recovery. Plus, there are people that just want to use something simple and elegant like a cloud native application. And if it's a basic thing, there's that. So I think you're looking at it the exact opposite way. I think you're going to see major, major, major increases in the cloud architects that are needed. Now, here's what the thing is. Even if they weren't building their clouds, which they are, and they're going to be going to it, they still need the cloud architects, because the cloud architect is the new enterprise architect that's doing digital transformation. So whether you called it the network architect, the cloud architect, application architect, all architects aren't touching technology. They're all about transforming a business with technology. So, with the same skills that I teach you, you could get an enterprise architect job too, with a couple of years experience. And no matter what, there's lots of architect positions, and they're growing. Why? When I was younger, we needed a lot of engineers, and here's the reason. The tech didn't work so well. It was complicated, and all we cared about was someone's technical skills. The tech is really reliable now. It's not like the stuff that I work with. Not working with limited memory and CPU capacity like we used to. So since the tech works now, we need people that can figure out how to use the tech for business performance, not people who just know how to configure the tech, which is why I don't push programming careers, because I think they're in trouble, and they're going to be outsourced all over the world. I teach the best and most in-demand careers that are out there: cloud architect, cloud engineer, and leadership development. So I think you're going to be great, Zex. Scott Rogers. Hi, Mike. As someone new to the tech industry, how many months of live classes would you need to recommend in your program? Thank you for what you do for the community. Well, Scott Rogers, I don't know you, but I will tell you, on average, it takes about 8 months for one of the students in my program to get hired, and they get hired inside of our program. Meaning, for example, we let the people stay in our program for up to a year. And I do that because I don't want to have a graduation. Our graduation is cloud hired. So I'd say it takes about 8 months on average if you're willing to work hard enough. Now, I've had some people do it sooner, and I've had some people do it longer, but typically speaking, it's about 8 months from the time you begin and the time you finish, as long as you do the work. Now, Scott, I'm very confident I can get pretty much anybody hired. The question is, do they do the work? And what I mean by this is, one time I had a student that literally told me, Mike, I'm not learning anything. And I said, I've never seen you in class. I've never seen you turn in your homework assignments. He says, I'm not doing that. I play your thing, put it on my phone on my pillow when I go to sleep. I said, that's not training. And we all laugh at that. But, some people aren't willing to put in the work. But if you're willing to come, you're willing to put in the work, we will do anything we can, Scott Rogers, to get you and help you get to your goals and be a wonderful cloud architect, have a great career, earn a lot of money. And my average student's salary ranges between 120 and 287. Those were the offers we had in the last 12 months. Average, I'd say, is about 160 for new people without experience. Love to help you. And I'd be honored and privileged to train you. If you've got more questions, Scott, please ask them. Ducey states great feedback. Yes, I appreciate exactly when he was talking about us. Robics OR, they don't teach us in the university, even IT studies. Why would they? IT studies teach you how to be an engineer. Architect is how to be a business executive. It's a different career. You'd be better off going to business school to be an architect and just learning the tech than trying to go to school to learn engineering. You learn engineering, you have nothing in common with an architect. You know engineering. Here's the good thing, it looks good on the resume. And here's what I like. It doesn't matter what's on your resume that will help you get an interview. It's the knowledge that you have in your head that gets you hired. And that's why I don't care what your degrees are in. I don't care what your background's in. I don't care what certifications you have. Look, I do want you to get two good certifications. Why? It'll help you get an interview. But understand there's nothing in these certifications that will ever get you hired. But it builds an illusion of competency. It looks fake on a resume. And your resume is an advertisement that says, why should I bring you in on an interview? So it can help there. Scott Rogers, yes, we're here about brutal honesty. Any one of my students is about brutal honesty. He just became my student, but here's the thing. If we don't talk clearly and honestly and ethically about things, the reality is, which is sad, people aren't going to get to their goals. People don't get to their goals by bluffing, by lying. People don't keep a good reputation by doing so. Honesty, integrity is really the secret to a long career. It's a very small industry. And we all talk to each other. So it's all about that. So I appreciate Smith for really being honest, open, and ethical. He's got a big, bright future ahead of him. Good. Vash. Thanks for the great content and honest answers. I will definitely attend future relevant sessions. I am only 20, and hopefully you'll be able to apply for your dream job soon. Devesh, and once you get the right training, you'll be able to get hired for your dream job. Okay, just make sure you get the right training and learn the right thing. Chris will go to the next. Teacher, we love teachers. It's a nice career to expert for computer. Well, I'm not completely sure I understand what you were saying there, but I love having teachers because teachers know how to give instructions. They know how to listen. They know how to follow a plan. They know how to deal with problems. So for example, we've got a student that's got some family issues and they're not performing, and the teacher can go and figure out why the student's struggling, communicate it to the family. The teacher can then negotiate for resources for the student. They don't all do it, but good teachers do. The teacher knows what they have when they don't have the resources, and most teachers buy it on their own just to be sure that their students are successful. So all those things about teachers are really there and really critical. For a teacher, it's just about teaching the CXO relevancy and the high-end leader stuff, as opposed to the regular leadership they're doing, and add that to the tech piece. Most teachers have a degree of emotional intelligence. They have to sell their students and actually doing the homework assignment. So I love this teacher background. I love it. And I've worked with him in the past, and it's great seeing teachers get clout hired. Robex, does an architect review the project delivery before it's to be delivered to the client and make sure it's specs? No. Robex is very simple. We design it, we present it, we sell it, and then we go to the next customer. And once we're done with the design, if it's a big design, they'll assign a service delivery executive, which is typically a director level position, who will then bring in some hiring managers and all those magical engineering teams to get it done. And no, we're not part of that. Design it, present it, and sell. Now, occasionally there are some post-sales architects that we get involved in something like this, but not usually. It's usually much more engineering at that point. And it's really about my engineering teams. But there are post-sales architects as well, but they're typically not real architects. They're mostly engineers. So no, as a rule, we don't review project deliveries. That's not part of our job. We design it, present it, and sell it. And then Robex, the post-sales architects that we're typically talking about are those that work in, say, banks. And what I mean by that is, let's say a bank wants to improve their something or other. The people that work for the bank that are cloud architects will ask the leadership, what are your goals? Then they'll ask the department heads what kind of things that they desire to do. Then those architects will do the following. They'll take those requirements and they'll reach out to the engineers in their team. And they'll ask those engineers to go baseline the systems, design the systems with them as a collaborative effort. Then the architect will go back to their manager and their manager's managers, and again present to the executive team and convince the executives they need to buy the tech that you're actually recommended. And then from there, it'll get turned over to a build team, which is a bunch of really smart engineers that are going to put the pieces together. So no, Robux, we don't touch the tech as architects. That's not something we do. And so in effect, an in-house architect is really doing the same thing that a cloud architect working for a cloud provider would be doing. The only difference is the in-house architect is there to make sure that the pre-sales architects are real. So for example, AWS is a great company. They're not going to sell anything unethical. But if AWS had a bad sales rep and a bad architect that were trying to sell stuff that was more profitable for them, as opposed to what's in the business interest of the customer, the cloud architect working at the customer would say, nope, not so fast. I want these services from you and these from Azure and these from Google. Now, AWS wouldn't be doing something unethical like that. They're a great company. But that's why organizations have their own. Because sales reps are compensated to sell. And one vendor, I'll tell you this, will try to say we can do it all for you, but the reality is you need multiple partners, multiple clouds. So that's why organizations have post-sales architects too. I don't know what these certifications are, Robux. You have to be a little more clear. A lot of our students get hired with 0 certifications. And some of our students have certifications. I like our students to get 2 basic intro-level certifications, like the Certified Solution Architect Professional, and then ideally like a networking thing like a CCNP or a security thing like the CISSP. But they're all basic and intro level. But many of our students get them without certifications, and then their employers pay to send them for certification training, and they're getting paid as an architect to go there. And when an employer sends somebody to certification training, I promise you, it won't be PowerPoint slides with audio hearing blah, 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 blah. It's going to be taught by architects like me that know it. And we're going to teach it live. And people are going to ask questions because no company is going to be using that kind of nonsense. They want real training and real education. That other stuff is just for fill-in self-help in between the real education courses. But I think it's better to get 1 or 2 basic ones, meaning like a Certified Solution Architect Professional and a CCNP, intro-level certs in my mind. But associate certs aren't really ready to do the job. Professional certs look good. Get those 2 basic certifications. And I had a student that did the Certified Solution Architect Professional and the CCNP and the Azure Solutions Architect Expert. Her last job was working in a supermarket, and she did all 3 in 2 months because they're not that hard to do. And then she focused on learning how to be an architect, but she did all that stuff with us. So get whatever you need to get an interview. And then after that, don't focus on it. And if your company wants you to get it, but let them pay for you to have it. Cloud architects, what help us most in telecommunications engineering? I'm not completely sure I understand your question there. Cloud architects basically redesigning networking and data center solutions. Because all clouds are the same. They're 100% the same. I mean, they all make up silly names for their services, but they all have servers. They all have load balancers. They all have routers and switches and firewalls. They're all the same. There was a song from The Who, Meet the New Boss, same as the old boss. Or was that the Rolling Stones? Can't remember right now. But, I look at clouds in the following way. If I was going to build a building and I need a brick, it doesn't matter which store I go to, I know I need a brick. Now, sure, somebody's going to call it an elastic building dense device, and somebody's going to call it a cloud-based exterior wall device, and somebody else is going to call it a red hard piece of rock or cement, but The reality is, it's still just a brick, and it doesn't matter where I buy that brick from. So architects design the end-to-end piece, all the network and all the data center stuff, and the applications we get involved in that can transform businesses. But I couldn't completely understand what you were asking there. Zach, you're more than welcome. Is cloud usage optimization part of a cloud architect job? I don't even know what you mean. Now, if you're referring to the people that are in that data center staring at their computer screens that are looking at link filling up, that's sysup, which is not our job at all. Now, what is our job if someone basically says to us, look, these are our systems in the data center, and we want to move them into the cloud, then we basically have to think about, what are the systems that are running in the data center? What kind of CPU cores, what kind of DRAM, what kind of hard drive performance, what level of utilization are they? And then determine from that what we need to migrate it to in the cloud. That's us. But as far as, people that are sitting there doing capacity planning all day long, that's low-level sysop stuff, not architecture stuff. Think of it this way, Robics. If it doesn't involve designing, presenting, and selling, it's not an architect's job. It's somebody else's. Because that's really what we do. Well, a lot of entertaining clients, a lot of golf necklaces, those kind of things. Chris, let's bring you the next one. Okay. Hey, Mike, loving the architect program. You've learned so much. I remember you saying Trell is the worst course. Can you elaborate? Look, Hakeem, I don't comment on any certification providers. All I'm going to say is certification training is not adequate to get a cloud architect job or any good job. But there's not much more that I can say about that. Josh Daniel, are there any BGP workshops coming up? Absolutely. Enjoyed the session from last year with Imran. We'll continue watching and studying of it. Well, I think there is. I think you can expect lots of good BGP fun coming up. So the answer is John Daniel. Yes, yes, yes. We are going to have most likely a surprise for you with plenty of BGP coming real soon. Good question, John. Robics, you assisted to the live class. I did understand nothing about the case where the others seem to be knowledgeable. How much time do you guys spend to know about this? Well, Robics, if you were in class yesterday, you heard me say that I lost my voice. You also heard me say that it was a very difficult class. And you also would have heard me say at the beginning of the class that I was doing a special class and I was only picking the certain people to be on that architecture group that had lots of experience. What did I put in that class? A bunch of networking people that had a big networking background, because yesterday's class was a very, very, very simple architecture. One that if people actually knew the underlying technology, they literally could have done in 10 minutes and been done with it. I did it this way, and I had other people working together because I lost my voice. I'm still struggling with my voice, and I was trying to do a low speaking class. But yesterday's class was about something called listening, and listening. Now remember, in the class, I always talk about senior people, mid people, and junior people. And I always say that we have the senior people leading these architectural designs, and the medium people that are helping them, and the new people that just got there are there to watch and observe, and they may or may not know. And that's why we're not in a rush to get them there. But this was a chance for you to come up mute and ask a question to somebody if you had a question. Now, I didn't hear you ever ask a question in the class, but if you had a question, that was a perfect time for you to ask that question. Turn on your camera and ask. And really, that's the key, is you got to participate and ask. If you don't know, ask. In class, when I dropped hints, and I started talking about frame relay, and this being the same thing, and ATM and VPLS clouds all being identical to what we're doing in class, that was your chance to go Google those things, look them up, and participate in the discussion. Now, really, something that was really scary to me was how many people didn't listen to the instructions, because that's the actual job. But that's why we have senior people helping junior people, helping new people. And I also did say at the beginning of the class, it was a very special class because we were trying to save my voice, because I've got laryngitis, and the doctors have me on steroids already for it to try and inflame it. So I was trying not to talk. So corticosteroids, obviously. But that's the point is that's why it was different. But I did say this at least 3 times in the class. So you will get there. You will get there. But please follow the directions, read the course, read the things that we're trying to tell you about. So we can't tell you how long it's going to take for you to reach senior, because it depends on you. It depends on how fast you're doing those required readings, how fast you're doing the assignments, if you're following the feedback on the lessons we've done. So do those things. I can tell you what, I know you haven't read the BGP RFC. And why? Because I know for a fact if you did, you would have been able to help with that. I know that you didn't look up some of the networking things that were required reading on that course. You know how I know that? If you did, you would have been able to participate in class. And I know for a fact you didn't watch certain training things in the course when we talked to this, because if you did, you would have known what to do. But that's the thing, Robics. It takes time. I think you've been with us for a couple of weeks. It takes 8 months for a reason. So my best advice to you, Robics, to pass is you keep wanting to go down certifications in finance, lessons in this career, lessons in this career, lessons in this career. I would like you to focus. I'd like you to be like an Olympian and focus. I would like you to stop worrying about all the other stuff that's out there. Follow the class in order. Lesson 1, lesson 2. There's probably 1,000 lessons in there. Chris could tell me better than me, because he chopped them into smaller bits and bytes than the videos that I recorded to make it easier. Because I just like watching 1-hour videos personally, but other people don't. Now, personally, I want you to go back and watch those old classes in between classes so you can get great. Because I want you to be great, 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 great. So please follow the course. There's at this point probably close to 1,000 hours of training you could do, even though we say the course is about 500 hours. But if you want to go back and watch those videos, it's going to get you there. So please go back and watch those videos. Follow the course in order, in order, in order, in order, in order. And then you're going to be good to go. But remember, you just joined the program like a couple of weeks ago. Comments. In terms of job ability and with cloud technologies these days, what architect type is needed? Infrastructure versus networking versus security? Is it better to be a generic architect? We need them all. Can't survive without any of them. And that's the thing, Clements. What do we do as an architect? If I'm a generic architect, every time it comes to a design, who am I going to call? An infrastructure architect, a network architect, a big data architect. All these things. Keep that in the back of your mind. So yes, that's exactly what we're dealing with. So which one do you want to do? Which one's going to make you happy? There's jobs for all of these things. It's impossible to hire somebody good. Comments, I'll tell you, I'll interview 1,000 architects. And 90% of what I'm going to get is a certification answer, which shows me that people don't know anything. So it's better to be what you like. If you like networking like me, then heck, cloud networking is wonderful. But if you like security, cloud security is interesting. And if you want to be like me and basically stay generic and focus exactly on the business executive and specialize in digital transformation, now that's your highest paid of all of them. That's the hardest person to find. But What do you want to do, Clements? They're all good. What's going to make you happy? Here's the thing. If you're not happy, you're going to be miserable. And if you're doing something that makes you miserable, you can't be the best at it. You're not going to be motivated to read and motivated to attend training and motivated to get better. So I ask you, what would you enjoy doing, Clarence? I'll tell you that you can earn lots of money in any of these things, and there's more jobs than you can imagine in any of these things. Keep that in the back of your mind and you'll be good to go. So nice to see you, Stephen. I'm thrilled that you're here. Okay, you're still on chapter 2. Exactly. That gave me the information that I did need. Rob, big respect for teachers. Yes, I have huge respect for teachers. Huge, huge, huge. Comments. While going to your course, are there other ways, courses, lessons to become an architect with good business acumen and better RO money or customers? So hold on. While going to your course, you mean through our course? What other ways, courses, lessons to become an architect with good business acumen and better RO modeling? Well, comments, I would recommend you follow our course. If you are in our course, and here's the reason why. If you don't follow our course and you go learn stuff on your own, which you don't even need to know what you need to know, that's not going to help you. Now, if you want to learn more business acumen, get an MBA. Highly recommend that to everybody. But it's not like you're going to be able to go find courses out there that are basis. No. Comments, if you want to find some good speaking courses, some good executive presence courses, I'll recommend them to you in class. But I'm going to tell you, to take 4 or 5 of them is going to cost you $20,000, $30,000 to get real training versus the stuff that's out there that's taught by people that don't know the jobs. But I can point you to the right questions in class if you desire that. But you're going to get more than you need if you ever follow the course. And comments, if you want better business acumen and better leadership, here's another course that you can take. Now, I'm going to say this. I tell my students not to take 2 courses. Because some people want to buy a cloud architect course and a cloud engineer course, and I say, please don't do that. Because being a cloud engineer won't make you an architect, and being an architect won't make you an engineer. But comments, I do have one course. It's called the Tech Career Accelerator Program. And if you're one of my students, you only need the basic. If you're not one of my students, you need the live. And this is a full leadership course. And me and one of the best executives I've ever met, we got together and we put the leadership course together. It is much more business acumen, much more leadership skills, much more presentation skills. It's kind of like a mini MBA. And you could do that, and the cost for the basic course is just $500. And you can do that alongside this, because it's very different leadership than the one in the Cloud Architect program. The Cloud Architect program is to give you all the business skills that you need to become a good cloud architect and get hired. The Tech Career Accelerator program is, let's say you're a cloud architect and you want to really deepen your business skills to move into a distinguished role or a principal role, or you want to become a manager, director, or VP. That's what that courses are. And that course is purely a mini MBA in a box. And I'm very proud of that course. It's an extremely good course. And for that, I can recommend. But we created it as after somebody became a cloud architect and they wanted to move up and increase their salary. That was the point of that. But you could do that with ours, and that would be complementary. It's not like learning engineering and architecture at the same time. So that one I can say is pretty good for you. I can tell you Delroy Batt, who recently got 3 architect jobs, and another cloud provider just reached out to him, but he's going to turn it down constantly because he loves his company and he loves his job. And he didn't have any certifications. He did take that class. And I will also tell you that I have some of my other students taking that class along the way, and they do really, really, really well. Now, if you want inside of a class, if you want to hear the other companies that can do it, I'm happy to tell you them, but they're going to cost you a lot of money because I went to them and they did help me. And the other alternative is to get an executive coach. If you need one, I can recommend one. You can have one of us on our team, or you could have my executive coach herself. She's fantastic. If she'd be interested in coaching me, I'd ask her. Kapil, hey Mike, which platform to learn first to begin and get employed? Well, if you learn one cloud platform, you're never going to be employed. It's about understanding the cloud. So let's talk about the difference between a certification cloud to learn and really knowing the cloud. If you just get a certification, it's going to teach you the name of a service and how to configure that service. And guess what? You will not know the cloud at all. You're not going to know how to design it, how to build it, how to optimize it. You're not going to know anything other than how to configure stuff. Now, Kapil, what if I told you that all clouds were the same? What if I told you the key to learning the cloud is not learning the cloud at all? It's about learning the stuff that makes the cloud. And what if I told you that if you understand the stuff that makes a cloud, you know all clouds? And you'll be able to pass a Google Professional Cloud Architect certification in less than 2 days like I did. And here's the reason why. You'll understand it. So if you learn the following: BGP, IP addressing, subnetting, and supernetting, and route aggregation, interior gateway protocols such as OSPF, WAN technologies such as IPsec tunnels, SSL-based VPNs, private lines, Ethernet over MPLS, software-defined networking, and SASE. And then you learn NAT, one-to-one NAT, one-to-many NAT, static NAT, dynamic NAT, PAT. And then after that, you learn switching, which involves spanning tree, rapid spanning tree, VLAN tagging, VLAN trunking, Ether channel, port channel, link aggregation groups, DNS, DHCP, ARP, proxy ARP. And then after that, you understand servers and server virtualization, containers and container orchestration, block storage, object storage, file storage, and the storage area networks, RAID, and all of its variations that you need to understand because block storage is so slow, despite what they teach you in the certification. And then after that, we're dealing with business applications and enterprise applications that need to be there. We're dealing with load balancers, network load balancers, application load balancers, APIs, API gateways, reverse proxies, next generation firewalls, IDS, IPS systems, VPN concentrators, etc. And then you learn all that. Guess what? You know all clouds. And then while somebody else is trying to learn some silly name of the service and you're talking about virtual machines, you'll know whether it's an AWS EC2 instance, an Oracle virtual machine, an Azure virtual machine, or a Google Compute Engine instance. They're identical. And when we talk about object storage, you're not going to care whether it's AWS S3, Microsoft Blob, or Google Cloud Storage, because it's all the same stuff. And if you understand Kubernetes, you understand that on all clouds, because it's the same thing. So it's not about learning a cloud, it's more about learning how to drive. So Kapil, instead of learning that this is an elastic vector angular changer, learn that it's a steering wheel. And then Kapil, once you learn how to drive or learn the cloud, it doesn't matter which cloud you're on, because I promise you're going to be on all three clouds. You're going to be in the AWS cloud, Azure cloud, Google cloud, OpenStack cloud, Nutanix cloud, Alibaba cloud, Oracle cloud. You're going to be on all clouds. And it's not possible to just learn the name of a service and how to configure those services and actually understand what the cloud is. And if you were to do that, not only would it be a miserably challenging point, you'd probably never get hired by just focusing on that, because you'd be focusing on all the wrong things. How are you going to learn the next cloud and the next cloud? So build the fundamentals, learn what the tech is, and then you're there. Here's the thing. People don't realize how I saw a working solution architect make a LinkedIn post, and he was a good guy and a smart guy. And he says, I'm so impressed with the way AWS has these virtual interfaces and can build virtual connections. And I said, yes, I was impressed with it in 1996 when it was Frame Relay. And when it was in 1998, it was still new to me as ATM. And then in 2001 with VPLS and pseudo-wires, it was impressive to me then, but now it's 25 years old. And that's the thing. And if you don't know the original tech, not only do you not know how to migrate it to the cloud, but when you try to present to your customer as something being new and exciting, which you will because you'll think it's new, and you don't know the history that it's been there for decades, unfortunately, you'll be escorted out of the room by security and your replacement will thank you for the new job. So don't learn any cloud platform first. Learn all the stuff that makes the cloud possible. And then when you're done that, you're going to know all the clouds. Then from there, you're going to have to figure out what career you want. Architecture, where you're going to have to learn design. Engineering, where it's going to be about building and scripting and coding and Terraform. But at least then you'll be there and you'll know all clouds. So build your fundamentals. We do it. And our students after this, they get hired like nothing. And I train somebody in AWS and then they go work at Azure as a cloud solution architect. Now we teach the Azure cloud, the AWS cloud, and the OpenStack cloud because of the three most common, but still doesn't matter. Any cloud is all the same. Hi, Mike, can you talk about the differences between architects, solution architects, and solution designers? Pretty much they're all the same thing. The main difference between a cloud architect and a solution architect is a cloud architect is going to be familiar with all clouds, and a solution architect is going to only know one or sell one. Solution designers, that can be anything. The key difference between an architect and everybody else is the business acumen, leadership skills, sales skills, executive presence, emotional intelligence. A designer could be an engineer, it could be an architect, it could be anything. But an architect is the main key that separates them from engineering, is engineers focus on the tech and architects focus on digital transformation. How do they make the business better? Through information technology, cloud technology, network technology, unified communications technology. And a real cloud architect or solution architect is going to be putting those pieces together. But they're very related to solution designers. But the designer could be an engineer without all those business skills, sales skills, in which case then they'll be an engineer. They're called the design engineer. But they could also be an architect. Can I tell you a funny story of what happened in one of our cloud architect missions? Oh, wow. Let me try to think for one that I can actually describe. Well, Robux, I've seen a few things. I've seen in my life as an architect where we brought an engineer with us because we wanted a little extra technical support. I've seen that engineer in literally in front of the customer's executives start babbling about nonsense. I've seen the engineers literally escorted out of the building by security, and that was pretty sad. I will tell you, most of the stuff that I've seen that really gets funny is, in some cases, your engineering team is working so hard to do these proof of concepts. And, I've seen people fall asleep. Actually, I'll give you the most funny one that I've actually seen. Many, many years ago, I was doing an architecture at the Pacific Coast Exchange in San Francisco. And I flew out there to make sure that I could project manage it. And there were 2-3 engineers that were there. And in those days, I was doing more of a technical architect kind of role. And I get on site, I get to everybody, and they all have these droopy eyes, and they all look kind of like not with it. And I remember I had said, well, everybody, we're going to be doing this, this, and this. The plan is to do this, this, and this. And I shouldn't have been project managing it, but I was. Small company and architects there, did a couple of jobs, and project management was one of them. I saw someone and I said, you okay? And he says, do you know what a rave is, Mike? And I said, not really. He said, you should come to a rave with us tonight. And I had said, okay, I know these wires are going to be pulled, so let's map this router to this router, et cetera, because it was a pretty big deal, even though the work wasn't very big. And I turned my head for 1 minute. The kid pulled out every wire from the router that was connecting to like the exchange, and it was connecting to financial stuff coming in, and it was connecting to this and all these critical feeds. And then the kid literally passed out and went straight to the ground. Apparently that kid had used way too many drugs with something called the rave, which I still don't even know what it is. And the rest of the team was completely out of it too. And I literally remember being there and trying to find some local engineer that could do it, and literally tracing wires from switch to each other with something called Show CGP Neighbors, which was about allowed at that time. And I was literally there praying and hoping that on Monday morning when the stock exchange opened, these systems were going to work. And actually they did, which is pretty hilarious. I can go on and on, but that one was probably the most crazy I've ever seen. But usually, Robux, it involves somebody offending somebody, and me going in there and buying lunches, dinners, and drinks, and then playing golf. And I hate golf, but whatever it took, I can't play golf anymore. But whatever it took to make the customers happy, and I swear half of the job is relationship management. And when you tell people what you do as an architect, they laugh hysterically because it doesn't sound like a job. It is, but it just sounds a little funny. What would I expect to see on a true cloud architect posting? If it's a real position and you're going to see it at a Cisco, or you're going to see it in an IBM, or you're going to see it in an AWS or a Microsoft, it's going to talk about customer facing roles and C-level communication and responding to RFIs, RFPs, RFQs. It's going to be talking sales. It's going to be talking about collaboration. It's going to be all facing that. And you'll see these things on real architect jobs. And that's the difference. Real ones, and every time I see a real job description, I share it with my students, and then they're like, oh my God, that's what I actually do in my job, meaning the real architects when we get there. So, for example, we never touch the technology, Austin. So these jobs will talk about leadership skills, communication skills, sales skills. They'll talk a lot about CXO relevancy, a lot about presentations, and a lot about being able to gather requirements from key stakeholders. Those are typically what you see in an architecture one. You'll see them in Cisco, AWS, Microsoft. Here's what you won't see: coding, configuring. Now, they may typically ask you to have a background in something. Background in networking, background in software development, background in data center skills, background in this thing, this thing, this thing. But we've proved time and time again that we've gotten people without any background in tech hired again and again and again. There's a list of people that Chris from my team could post in the chat box if you want. But those are really these terms, because architecture really is so goofy. And that's why Gartner had to write that report in CIO magazine, because people were using the term architect, and we all knew what architects were. And then there was a certification called an architect, which taught everything other than architecture, all admin work. And then it confused a lot of people. But the world knows now, and our students are getting hired constantly. JP Morgan Chase knows what an architect is. Deloitte will know what an architect is in their post. Accenture will know what it's going to be in their post. KPMG will know what they do in the post. Capgemini will know what they do in the post. Cisco, Microsoft, Dell, Palo Alto, Fortinet, Oracle will all have it in the post. So it's all based upon, whether they're real architect jobs or not. But that's what you see there. Good question, Austin. What's the ratio of you teaching classes compared to your staff? Well, it depends on the program. In the architecture program, I teach 95% of them. Now, I will tell you this, B. Spence. In my architect class, it's predominantly me. But because the architect is such an executive and needs so much business acumen, I do have 2 college professors that teach in an MBA program, both with doctorates, that periodically come in and teach business acumen skills. Why? We need people to have MBA skills, so I teach them, but sometimes I have them there. Now, the Mondays and the Tuesdays and Thursdays classes, I almost exclusively teach them unless I'm sick, which doesn't happen that often. But when I get sick, I usually bring somebody in. And if I get sick, I usually bring in working cloud architects. Like Praveen often will come in. He's a big data architect with JP Morgan Chase. We got him his first cloud architect job. He was a big data architect first, and we got him a cloud architect job. So he'll come in and teach big data, for example, because it's something that's not my strength. Occasionally, I'll have some application architects come in and actually teach some microservice architectural design, because I'm more of an architect than that background. Then I'd say I teach, Chris, what did you say, 90% of classes for the architect program?
Yes, definitely.
Now, in the engineering program, I'm not an engineer. So I have engineers teaching the engineering program, and I teach the leadership skills that they get once per week. So in the engineering program, I have Imran, who's an incredible engineer. He spent about 20 some years in engineering, has a couple of Cisco certified internet experts, and they're the only certifications that I care about, because for those, you got to work real hard to get them. They're not basic things like this. But he's incredible. And I've got Leo from my team, who's got a big background in tech and telecommunications, and he teaches some Linux things in that program. So great people in that program. But the architect course, I teach 90% of it. I care about my students. I've been an architect forever, so I'm always there. The engineering students, I haven't been an engineer in 20 some years. So I try to have engineers teach the course to make sure that I have the best people in the room. I want my students to get the very best, the absolute very best. And when I'm the best person to teach it, I teach it. When there's someone better than me to teach it, I bring them in, because I can't be the best at everything. But I can be the best at what I know to be the best. I'm probably the best at getting people hired and teaching people the leadership skills, sales skills, executive presence, communication skills. I'm an expert in teaching people how to design architectures, big architectures, little architectures, etc. So I teach that. But my engineers, they need better than me. It's not that it's not my world in engineering, so I bring in the best and brightest engineers I know, because I want to know that our students get the absolute best experience no matter what. Great question, B. Spence. And Michael, what's the average monthly salary in the U.S. for an entry-level solutions architect? I'd say about $12,000 a month. That's what we're seeing on average. Clemens, thank you so much. Your courses are what we need to say. You will follow our advice and the Tech Career Accelerator Plus. Clemens, if you're my student, just get the Tech Career Accelerator Basic, and we'll get you everything that you need. If you're a student in the Cloud Architect Career Development Program. If not, get the Tech Career Accelerator Plus Program Plus, and that's really, really, really going to help you get to your goals. Great question, Clemens. And we'd love to work with you, and I know that will be highly helpful to you. Of course, we can go to the next one. Cruz. What do I focus on, VNF or SDN? You're speaking, Cruz, you're speaking in acronyms. Could you please tell me exactly what you want? There's lots of VNF things that I know and multiple SDN things. Now, I'm assuming you mean software-defined networking or SD-WAN, but if you can put it in actual sentences, I'll know a bit what you mean and be able to answer that. Because there's lots of VNFs that I know. And realistically speaking, I don't focus on any technology, ever. I focus on what's the right technology at the right time. Sometimes it would be software-defined networking. Sometimes it would be private lines. Sometimes it would be VPNs, okay, anything. But I'm not really sure what you're asking for, because I know about 10 different VNF definitions. And that's why architects, we don't use acronyms, because it could literally be anything. So please tell me what your goal is, and then I'll tell you what you need to use. Chris, let's go to the next one. Stephen, is programming skills required for the architect role? No. Stephen, if it doesn't involve designing technology, presenting technology, or selling technology, it's not there. We don't code, we don't configure, we don't touch the tech, we don't use Git, we don't use the management console. We design, present, and sell. So here are your tools. Microsoft Word or Google Docs, Microsoft PowerPoint or the Google Docs equivalent, Microsoft Excel or the Google Docs equivalent, as well as typically a drawing program. We'll be using PowerPoint or its equivalent, and the drawing program could be Draw.io or Lucidchart. Those are the only things we use as architects, other than web browsers and Googles. We don't touch the tech, we don't code, we don't do anything. We don't SSH into systems, design, present, and sell. This is a business executive job, not an engineering job. Good question, though. I'm glad you asked, because people spend years learning to code, and they study DevOps and SysOps, and then they go on an architecture interview. And here's what they get told: come back when you have more experience. Why? Because they don't have any knowledge of architecture. So don't learn any of these things if you want to be an architect. But I'm going to tell you this right now: if you don't focus on your business acumen, that'll be a problem. So make sure you get the business acumen, leadership skills, sales skills, executive presence, emotional intelligence training, CXO relevancy training, business acumen, ROI modeling. Those are the skills. Oh, thank you, Mike. That is a funny story. I've been through a lot. B. Spence, if you want to go in security, it is better to take your engineering class than an architect. You do plan to do work for a government job. Well, I don't know, B. Spence. Would you like to design things, in which case it would be better to study the architect role and security? Or do you want to be the person that works on the firewalls, in which case it would be better to study the engineering course? Is your goal to be a hands-on techie? If so, that's engineering. If your goal is to be a cloud security architect like Delroy, who designed security solutions to lock down enterprises, or Robert Welch, then study the architecture world. Here's the difference. Architects focus on the security, engineers focus on doing the security. Which do you want to be? Do you want to configure the firewall? Engineer. Do you want to write the security policy? Architect. Do you want to sell the security solution? Architect. Do you want to touch and code all day in security? Engineer. That's really, really, really the things you're dealing with. Any MBA programs that I recommend? I always like Duke and Rice, London Business School, Cambridge Business School in England. Those two in England are great. I used to recommend Harvard Business School. I used to also like NYU, but after they fired a college professor for giving grades that are too hard, I don't know what kind of education you're going to get there. Because I want my programs to be hard and really learn, as opposed to teachers being fired because they actually make it hard for their students and teach them real life skills. But you know what? I like and recommend teaching colleges. And teaching colleges are something different. And they're often a lot cheaper. What a teacher's college is different than a regular university. In fact, Dr. Cooper Johnson and Dr. Jamie Long, who are adjunct instructors in our program, guess what? That's teacher's college. And what's the difference? Dr. Johnson ran a business, a big business for many years before he started teaching. And in a teacher's college, and to some degree I went to something like that myself, they teach real life skills. So while the professors in some places are focused on doing research and getting published, at teachers' colleges, they're focused on teaching real life skills. So, there's some very good teachers' colleges that are out there. I'm very impressed with what I see. Is it University of Tennessee where Dr. Johnson comes from, Chris? Because I'll tell you, I've met a few of their professors now, and they really impressed me.
Say that again?
Where Dr. Johnson and Jamie Long work, that teacher's college, I've seen some of their graduates, and they are rock stars.
Yes.
I've seen those 2%. What university is that? Is that University of Tennessee?
That is the University of Tennessee at Martin. The main campus at University of Tennessee is the research campus, of course. And the Martin campus is their teacher's college.
Well, that school, I got to tell you, I've got a chief operating officer from that program. I've spoken to multiple other professors, and wow, they provide a real education. So that's what's great about teachers' colleges.
I actually came from a different teacher's college, but still, same point, teacher's colleges. Unfortunately, they don't call them teacher's colleges anymore. So it's hard to figure out if it's a teacher's college. Obfuscation.
Obfuscation, yeah. And it's funny because I did 2/3 of an MBA at Drexel University when I was young. And I didn't learn any business, so I dropped out. And then years later, I went back to Pennsylvania Military College, now called Wide University, where I did my undergraduate and my first master's degree, and went there, and it was like a teacher's college. This person teaching this had been an executive at this store for 20 years, running their finance department as a CFO. This professor was a CEO. This professor was a so I forget what C-level executive. This one was a VP in marketing. And then the retirement jobs they decided to teach. Wow, this was a school. So I do love teachers' colleges. So the Ivy League schools teach a little more soft skills, which people tend to a lot of. But teachers' college give you practical skills, and they don't cost a fortune. Thanks for your help with that, Chris. What about information data privacy in the cloud? How providers address this to ensure their customers? Well, that's the thing. You're on the cloud providers do all their firewalls, IDS, IPS systems, et cetera. Keep that in the back of your mind. Now, if they get hacked, you get hacked. Like when Azure was hacked last year, many of their customers' things. So what about the information security in the cloud? Well, normally speaking in the data center, you just have your data center to worry about, all of the ingress and egress points. When you use the cloud as your data center, you have the same problems that you had traditionally in your data center, and now you got to worry about the cloud provider being hacked. So the cloud can never be as secure. Because, if I really wanted to secure my own data center, and I wanted to hire Navy SEALs on the roof that were armed, and snipers to keep people out of the data center. And I wanted to make my data center have 4-foot thick concrete and metal on the way in. And I wanted to have these security policies in my data center. I could do it. On the cloud, you're limited to whatever they have. Now, granted, in many cases, the cloud will be more secure than what most people have if their systems are outdated and dilapidated and not run properly. So it all depends on what your actual goals are. But cloud provider gets hacked, and it happens. So users get hacked. So it's just an additional attack vector. Meaning, not only do you have to protect yourself against yourself, you've got to protect yourself from the cloud. And the cloud doesn't give you the kind of micro segmentation you could do in the traditional data center. So you lose that. You lose quality of service. You lose that. And that's why organizations may have 1,000 VPCs to try and micro segment their systems. Does the cloud architect deal with legal constraints? Robex, you keep trying to learn other people's careers. Here's legal constraints. Lawyers. No, we have to get into some legal things like privacy things, but lawyers do legal things. Doctors do medical things. Architects design, present, and sell a solution. We follow things like GPDR or HIPAA. You may also call lawyers to work with us on programs, but lawyers do these things. Hi, Mike. I'm a service delivery manager, but want to switch to become AWS solution architect. However, based upon your job search, almost all positions need 5 years experience. How do you get hired? Eduardo, you trained properly. Romanik Ivan Tamba worked for AWS, and his last job was a waiter. Coyote's last job was a college student before AWS. He was one of our students, hired him as a solution architect. Jeffrey West was an incredible geology spatial person, and his first job was a cloud architect. Jermaine's last job was selling landscaping, and he got an architect job. Jennifer, her last job was a mental health tech, and now she's working at JP Morgan Chase as a cloud architect. Daniel Bosu's last job was selling shoes at Nordstrom, and he's now working at JP Morgan Chase as a cloud architect. Daniel Bosu's last job was in an EMT, and now is working as a cloud security architect. And I could go on and go on. Val Winter's last job was a stay-at-home mom and customer service rep, and she's now working for Microsoft as a solutions architect. So the key is the following. How good are you? Now, if all you're planning on studying the certifications, well, then it might take you 5, 10, 15 years experience to be considered. But our students get hired every day with no experience, but they're trained for it. Then again, my first job wanted 10 years experience, and nobody cared because I was competent. So employers want competency, 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 competency. HR wants experience. And why does HR want experience? Because HR doesn't know how to address your concerns. And the only way they can gauge your experience is your competencies, experience, and then they get sent to the hiring manager. We interview them, and we can't hire them. So then we go to a recruiter and say, just give me somebody that meets these qualifications. So I don't care about any job description that says experience. All job positions, Eduardo, always wanted experience. They all want 5 to 25 years experience. Every single job that's out there. Would you want to hire somebody fresh out of school that doesn't know anything? No, I wouldn't. Now I hire my students all the time to be part of my company. And other companies hire my students all the time because they're pre-trained and they're ready to go. And that's the difference between what we do and what everybody else does, Eduardo. Everybody else is teaching configuration, which architects don't do. And DevOps and SysOps and Linux, which architects don't touch. We teach the job. Our students can do the job. So yes, you can do it. No, you don't need experience, but you need to be competent. Competent, 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 and competent. Chris, how relevant is TOGAF? Smith, stop getting certifications. Start learning how to be an architect. It's not about certifications. Nobody cares about certifications. Of the 6,000 conversations I've had with hiring managers, they all center around the things. Can the person do the job? I don't care about certifications. Can I trust them? Do they know what they know and know what they don't know so they don't make mistakes? Are they energetic, enthusiastic, and passionate about the work? Are they lazy? Because I can't hire lazy. Are they willing to go above and beyond? And are they a team player? If you're focused on certifications, I promise you, you won't be learning architecture. And if you're not learning architecture, guess what? You won't be hireable. Focus on becoming an architect. Leave the paper certifications to the certification junkies that get the worst jobs at the lowest pay. You focus on being the best you can at your industry, being someone that's indispensable and so good and so capable that the world needs you. Dalrai Bach got hired with 0 certifications and an associate degree. 0 certifications, and I know his job, and it's a darn good one. Robert Welch, he just got hired for a really good job. Had no other certification other than a cloud practitioner. Don't worry about certifications, worry about being great. Just be great. Build your brand so recruiters and employers come to you every day like my students, and you'll be good to go. So I'd like to thank you all for being here. And I want to remind you about the following. Next week, next Thursday, we have our How to Get Your First Cloud Architect job webinar. And I'll tell you how to get hired when you have no experience. Make sure you sign up for the completely free AWS Certified Solution Architect Associate Bootcamp, and we'll teach far more than is required from that exam. Make sure you join us next Wednesday for the free Cloud Architect interview session. Please sign up for this now. Sign up and volunteer to be interviewed, and I will interview you. I will tell you whether you're ready, the skills you need to learn, and what are the things you need to do to get hired on your next interview. You're going to love it. Sign up for the free AWS Advanced Networking course. And if you want to get hired and not just certified, because we'll get you certified, but that doesn't matter. We'll get you hired. Take our Cloud Architect Career Development Program if you want to be a cloud architect. And if you want to be a cloud engineer, take our Cloud Engineer Career Development Program and get cloud hired. Everything we do is about getting you cloud hired. And see you all in the next session.